then go ahead and tell me you're not ready.
I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives.
In other words, the car didn't hit him, and he wasn't hit by the car.
I'm not a lawyer, but are y'all keeping up? I'm not a lawyer, but
the debrief.
Hello and welcome to another episode of I'm Not a Lawyer, But
the debrief.
I am Melanie, aka I'm Not a Lawyer, But, and I'm joined by my co-host
Gooseby. How y'all doing?
And we are not lawyers or legal experts, but some of us went to court this week.
And we want to hear all about that.
So we get on this podcast and we talk about it, okay? And so today we gonna talk about it, okay? I have done so many things. Lives.
That's my question. Let me interview you for a second.
Don't you interviewing me?
Yes. So how did your week start? Because I know we were debating if you should have went or not.
You know what happened. You was there.
I was, but the people don't know. Mel was this close. I mean, like this close, staying home.
Yes, I
was. The last day, the day she left is the day she decided, because she left Tuesday night.
Yep.
And she decided Tuesday morning she was coming.
We had been going back and forth. I have been mentioning this for a while that I was thinking about going. And Sunday night, I think, is actually when, or maybe it was Monday. It was very shortly before, but I guess maybe it was Monday night going into Tuesday. You and I were having this conversation about, should we go? Should Greg come with me? Should the kids come? Should we leave them? Like, what makes the most sense? Is it even worth it? I was going back and forth about coming at all, coming to homecoming or not, because next year is my 15 years. So like, why come 14, come 15? And then it was like, we agreed I would go. And then I took a shower. And when I got out, I told you, I'm not going. This is dumb. I'm not going. Mm-hmm. And then the next morning I was like, I'm going.
Because I agreed. I didn't want you going.
You did. You were like, yeah, it's fine. You don't need to go. And then I was like, it's day 150. Day 150 is coming up. And I feel like I should be there for day 150. If I'm going to go, why go for day 151? Be there for day 150. And so it was Tuesday. I shot the Gin and Juice podcast. And then I said, I think maybe before I went to Gin and Juice, we were discussing, should I change my flight to leave that same day? Because I was going to leave Wednesday, but we said, just leave on Tuesday, like leave tonight. Sorry if you hear the car. And so all of that to say, that's a long way of saying I ended up changing my flight the same on Tuesday. I probably changed my flight at 3 p.m. and I changed it for me to leave at 9:45. Mind you, I had a lash appointment. I low-key stopped at the mall. I had something else to do Tuesday too. On top of the podcast, I had like so many things, but I was like, I'll just leave at 9:45. I like threw a bunch of stuff in my suitcase, left at 9:45, got here at 5 a.m. And then I was like, I'm going to take a nap. Thugger Daily, if you're familiar, if you've been following YSL, you are on X, you probably know Thugger Daily. He had given me the alley-oop where somebody reached out to him to do a podcast. And he was like, you should do, I'm Not a Lawyer, But instead. So I was like, I'm gonna come to Atlanta, take a quick nap, do the podcast. And then after the podcast, I'll go up to court for the afternoon session. So that is essentially the makeup of the day. It was quite chaotic. I wasn't even sure I was going to go, but it happened. And then did the macrodosing podcast. And then I went off to the trial. Okay. And I got there because I was like, let me try to figure out how to manage my way. And so I've told this story. So if you've been on the lives and following this week, you've heard this story, but I was in there and I was trying to figure out where the courtroom was, because the truth of the matter is last December, we were in town for the holidays and I tried to go to trial in December. Remember? You dropped me off. I dropped
Mel off and she could not find the
could not find it, but that's because all of the documents were saying 8C or 8A or something like that. And so I was sitting outside of that courtroom and nothing was happening and I was so confused. So I ended up leaving and I didn't go. And so this time I was like, bruh, I hit up Doug Weinstein and I was like, yo, tell me how to do this. How do I get to the actual trial so I don't miss it this time? And so I ended up seeing, you know, of course, one of the prosecutors. So I ended up low-key just following him to the courtroom. And we go in. And a little bit of context as to like what took place this week is that a lot of people have heard about Little Rod. Okay, Little Rod is one of the co-defendants on this trial, and he his only charge is the RICO count 1, but he has separately been charged and convicted of murder. So he is serving a life sentence already. So he is in this, and they are saying that the murder he's already been convicted of is an action, an overt act that was done in furtherance of YSL gang. Basically, he did that as a way of furthering, right, on behalf of YSL.
Did they bring him to testify against YSL?
Not to testify against. He's a defendant in this case, so he doesn't testify against. But his proximity to the other members is what they wanted, is what the lawyers are saying, right? Like, this guy's already been convicted. So let's put this convicted murderer and say he did this, you know, for the sake of YSL next to all of these other co-defendants to show how bad this group, this organization, this criminal enterprise really is.
Ah, okay.
Right. And so it's, someone else may describe it as prejudicial, right? It's to make you prejudice against them. It's to make you judge them. It's to make you prejudge them based off of this information that you have. Well,
that's exactly what it is.
Well, exactly.
And then he doesn't take the stand or anything. He's just
absolutely not. As a defendant, you don't have to. But they get to enter in the conviction and what happened regarding this murder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, he is currently 19. So I bring that up only to say the state has finally, I don't mean to say finally, but they have officially gotten to the point of this RICO trial where they are talking about Little Rod and this murder. They finally have gotten there. And so they start with this witness who was not supposed to be named, but her name is said and shown repeatedly. But they start with this witness, and she basically recounts what happens according to her testimony, right? She says that she had been hanging out with Little Rod and the other co-defendant, the other person charged with the crime. And it sounds very much like a setup. Okay, she walks them through. She's with her homegirl. They call up some friends. The friends come, and as soon as these girls get out of the friend's car, Little Rod and the other co-defendant for that case end up shooting this car up, and somebody dies, right? Jamari Holmes, he was 15 at the time. He ends up dying. So the state has finally got into the presentation of that part of the case. And, you know, they do regular examination, direct. They do some cross-examination, which was really interesting to be able to see the state attempt to poke holes in her story. I wish I had the clips. Because of the way things are going this episode, we don't all the way have the clips. But what was interesting is that she said after this murder takes place, this shootout, she gets back in the car with Little Rod, the person she said did this crime. They take her and lock her in a basement. She ends up finding a phone. There's a whole bunch of parts to this. And so on cross-examination, the attorney is like, and so you found the phone? And you just happened to be in the basement and they locked you in there. And then the first person you call is not the police, even though you solved this murder. You called somebody else. Like, there's a lot of like hole poking. And then following that, they have some people on the stand who, again, the testimony was just very interesting this week is what I would say. And that leads us to the day I finally arrived, day 150, and that's Wooney Lee. Okay, Wooney Lee is a co-defendant as well in this case. And let me see if I still have the picture of him. So if you are watching versus listening.
So
go ahead.
Wooney Lee and Lil Rod. The state has had them in their, I guess, in their back pocket this entire time.
I don't know if I would say back pocket. Because what do you mean by back pocket? Like that, he was always planned to take the stand because Wooney Lee was a co-defendant in this case and took a plea. He took an Alford plea, and he had factual acknowledgments as a part of that plea.
these witnesses just seem like I would have started out with these guys instead of waiting to day 150 to bring them up.
Yeah, you know, the thing that I would say that maybe hasn't been all the way well received, which is fine, is that only in the last 2 weeks is my opinion that this case has actually started to take shape, has actually started to make sense. As somebody who has been watching, so much information has just been like put out so randomly and not clearly. And the last 2 weeks was the first time that it was like, oh, is that y'all point? That's what y'all been trying to say this whole time. And so, yeah, it was up until then, it's been chaotic. So Wooney Lee, and actually I think I still have his plea deal, which may be even helpful to talk through. Okay, so this is Wooney Lee's plea, and he has an Alford plea, right? Which I think we've talked about. Alford plea are an Alford plea is rather when you are. It's not a guilty plea. It's not, yo, yeah, you caught me red-handed, I did it. It is. It's not a good idea for me to take this to trial. I'm not admitting I did it, but I'm admitting that it's a bad idea for me. It is in the best interest of me to negotiate with you something that allows me to not have to go to trial. So that's what he did. This is an Alford plea.
That's the same thing Gunner did, ain't it?
Correct. Gunner has an Alford plea. And so with this plea, he has special conditions and he has acknowledgments. Okay. And so we can go through them. And actually, you can even see the negotiated plea is as follows. His count was count 1, conspiracy to violate RICO. Okay. The sentence, 10 years to serve, 1 year commuted time to serve with a balance of 9 years on probation. So he essentially got 9 years probation, first offender treatment. And the state does not object to the court ordering the sealing of the Kirk's file pursuant to after 3 years of probation. So after 3 years, his record gets sealed. This gets sealed, right? As long as he has successfully fulfilled everything he's required to. But it won't be sealed to law enforcement and prosecutors. So prosecutors, law enforcement, but if he's applying for like a job per se, it would be sealed. Yeah. Okay, so now the special conditions. I, Wooney Lee, will testify truthfully to all matters about which I am questioned. In particular, I will testify that. Okay, so this again has to do with you saying, that was in their back pocket. This was always the plan for him to be called.
Okay.
The first one, YSL is a gang. Right. So he is testifying that he's going to get on the stand and say YSL is a gang. I became associated and or affiliated with YSL in the year of 2017 at the age of 19. Now, remember, we just talking about Rodalius Ryan. The other thing he's saying he will testify to is I sent a witness who testified in the case of Rodalius Ryan and Damone Blaylock. That's the other co-defendant, right? A message on Instagram containing a rat emoji and a brain emoji. So just to put that in context, Rodalius Ryan, Damone Blaylock on trial for murder, right? Regarding that incident, he is saying he sent one of the witnesses in that trial a rat emoji because she was a witness and a brain emoji. Okay, so that's what they're saying he was supposed to testify to. I will possess no guns during the term of the sentence. I will commit no criminal acts. And then more acknowledgments. He's acknowledging YSL, otherwise known as Young Slime Life, as a gang. Some of the identifiers are wearing a green or red bandana, wearing clothing with the word YSL or slime, wearing pendants displaying the letters. Some colors are red for blood, green for slime, several hand signals. There's some language, blat, slat, C would be. Some of the symbols are green heart and green snake.
My goodness.
I'm aware that members and or associates claim to have committed at least one of the following acts in the name of YSL. That's murder, aggravated assault, robbery, theft, illegal firearm possession. I'm remorseful for participating in this type of activity. Gang life destroys the life of young people, and I no longer want to participate in this type of activity that destroys the life of our youth and my community. If I violate this plea agreement, the DA can and will use this statement during any judicial proceeding, and I'm subject to be resentenced to the maximum sentence allowed by law for each charge to which I am pleading.
Let's take a break from the show and talk about our sponsor, HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip the trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make your home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. HelloFresh has tons of options for whatever you're craving. Choose from the changing menus, over 50 recipes each week, plus take your pick over 100 market add-on items like desserts, breakfasts, and snacks. Choose meals that match you and your family's lifestyle with preferences like fit and wholesome, quick and easy, or vegetarian. You will always find something to love from HelloFresh. HelloFresh delivers the meals straight to our doors. Well, the ingredients, and one of the easiest ones to make is meatloaf. Mel knocks it out with all the ingredients. It's real easy, so it takes like 10 to 15 minutes maybe to get everything situated in the oven, out the oven, and on the plates. And the kids love it. So anything that can satisfy my children, I'm cool with it. Okay, so get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/free lawyer.
Free lawyer.
Applied across 7 boxes. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/free lawyer.
Free lawyer.
America's #1 meal kit. Back to the show.
Any violation may result in my first offender status being revoked and my being resentenced to the maximum sentence allowed by law for each charge. No promises, agreements, or conditions have been made other than those set forth in this document. Okay. All sign. You see the WL every time, right? So all sign. So he's called to the stand because, like I said, we're in the midst of the discussion regarding Rodalius Ryan. And so a part of this Wooney Lee's plea is during his charge, during his trial, I sent a witness a brain and a rat. So that it just pulls together a little bit as to why he was called right now at this time, just to kind of make it make sense, because I told you it's the first time in the last 2 weeks this trial has actually been done in a way that of course, now is the time to bring this witness. What has been happening before is they just been, here's this witness, it hasn't made sense. But this is like, oh, I see the connection you're trying to make. You're trying to paint the story.
I totally agree. I'm like, this is evidence. This is like
following it. Exactly.
Yeah, you can follow what's happening.
What's happening. So when I get to court on day 150, Wooney Lee is the person called. He's the person called. He's the witness. So I walk in and I am looking all around the courtroom. Okay. I see the defendants, which I'm like, oh my gosh, that's who I've been seeing on the stream for the last year. Right. Like I see Thug. I see Shannon Stillwell and Max Shart. I see Brian Steele. I see Keith Adams. I see Nichols and Bruce Harvey and Nicole Westmoreland. I see Marquavius Huey and the father and son duo that rep him. So it's a little bit of like, oh my gosh, like I'm in here. I also see Mr. Kokomo, who works with Max Shart.
How's your heart pumping?
I was walking in was like, at first you're fine. Well, I was fine. But when you walk in, you're like, the respect that this is a courtroom and a trial and a proceeding. You know what I'm saying? Like that is what is happening. And then I look ahead and I see the judge. I'm also like, I want to see Whitaker. So you see her. My angle is not the best of her, but I can see her. I see Mr. Abadi and Simone Hilton sitting at the state's table. The jurors are, it looks like glass. It very well could not be glass, but it looks like glass that has like a legal tint. It's like a level beyond like regular legal tint where you can look at you look at the window of a car that has tint and you can still see, you can kind of gauge who's in there, who they are a little bit. Yeah. This for me was not as clear. Like it was darker than like tint, regular tint.
You think they do that to keep people from recognizing them?
Absolutely.
I mean, I wonder why it would just be it wouldn't be just blacked out tint. Because you say you can still see.
Well, and this is what I will say. So the area they told me to sit in is the very back. They were like,
Okay.
spectator, you're not media. I was like, no, girl. So the very last row is reserved for spectators. The row in front of that is friends and family. Actually, I think friends and family. The row in front of that is media. I think there's 2 rows for media.
Mhm.
Maybe even 2 rows for friends and family. So they're kind of, I'm giving you just generally, but for sure, the last row is reserved for spectators. And it's only the last row. It's not like multiple rows. It's the last row. So I'm sitting at the very last row, and I'm sitting in a way in which I can see the witness stand, because I wanted to be able to see the witness stand. I knew Wooney Lee was coming. I wanted to see the witness stand. I wanted to be able to see the state. I wanted to be able to see some of the defense. I couldn't see everybody the whole time, but like I had a general view, and I wanted to see the judge. So I'm sitting in the very back, and she says, "State, call your next witness." And I had passed him anyway. So Wooney Lee comes in, gets on the stand, and again, the stream feels so different. Like the stream, I met the cameraman who is for Law and Crime. His name is Maurice. He does such an amazing job. But what you realize is like, oh, it's just very different.
Yeah. Being in court, period, is a different feel. Like you said, walking into this space that's demanding respect, you know.
Yeah.
And to be in your position where you've been covering it, knowing that people know you've been covering it, and not knowing how they're gonna take it.
Oh my gosh.
That's
And I just want to answer a couple people in the Patreon are asking. Ashley is saying maybe the jury can see out, but you can't see in. Yes, that is the case. We can't really see clearly in. They can see out. They can for sure see what's happening. We just can't. So yes, you're accurate in that. And so Tiffany is asking, is the courtroom inverted? And that's hilarious. Shout out to the Karen Reed trial. So
that's why. Karen Reed is never gonna get old, but go ahead.
Ever. So anyway, all of that to say, Wooney Lee is called, and Simone Hilton is questioning him. During her questioning, Attorney Love walks in. And again, even that, I know she is not the most loved. Love is not loved generally. But I was like, oh my gosh, that's Love. And so that was even like, that's her. Does she feel how I thought she would look? Like, you're just taking all this in.
Yeah.
And this is the other thing I want to say before I get into obviously what happened. I was sitting next to the friends and family. So directly in front of me is Yak Gotti, aka, well, his real name is Diamante Kendrick. His mother, her name is Miss Tasha.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know who she was. I just came in and she was like, and I was like, hey, girl. She was like, I'm Yak's mom, the friendliest woman. And for me, and I want to say this, and I mean, please be clear, regardless of how you feel about what these men have or have not done, that I'm not focusing on that part.
Yep.
What I'm saying is the idea that a mother had the energy that she had when she has been at the courtroom every day fighting for her son's life, I was wowed. She said to me on more than one occasion, I don't need no army for my son. I'm the army. I will go down about mine. She said, that's my baby, and I will fight. And I feel like these prosecutors thought that these men didn't have people who loved and cared about them, and surprise, they do.
Mm-hmm.
That for me was like amazing to see, because I feel like a lot of people forget or dismiss people who have been categorized or labeled or put in jail, right? And and I'm sure even inmates probably feel forgotten about. This woman has been there, she said, every day, and she will continue being there every day.
And imagine if you didn't show up, you would have never got to experience that.
Oh my gosh.
On top of everybody else that's doing what you do on, TikTok and on the internet, they're not experiencing that feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, you will dismiss it and not even think about it.
Yeah. It humanized them in a way.
Yeah.
And I always generally try to keep top of mind that these are people and their lives are affected. But talking to a mother particularly,
Ah,
like you are a mama, and I know how I feel about my kids, and I feel
yeah.
like, well, let's go toe to toe about my children. This woman really has to go toe to toe, and she's showing up, and
Yeah.
she's showing up. And to the point, I was just asking her, generally, like, how do you get through this kind of stuff? Whatever, just casually having conversation. And she said, I tell my boy, you stay on your square. She's very Atlanta. Okay.
Mhm.
So stay on your square. Like she said it. So
Yeah.
stay on your square.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's the kind of motivation I imagine you need. Your life could, like, literally, you are fighting for your life. And she was, my son that made mistakes, all of that. But I'm his army, and I'm gonna show up every single day. And I just wanted to, like, take a moment to recognize that, because it really, that's a moment to the point that you're making. I wouldn't have never gotten on a stream. You don't
Yeah.
get that. You don't know that.
Mhm.
And streams can disconnect the reality and the humanization of these people.
Yep.
And so being there and having that conversation was just really impactful for me. It really was. I thought it was beautiful. I thought seeing a mother fight for her child.
Mhm.
Again, I'm not saying innocent, guilty. That's not the point of my conversation. That's not the point. So don't be in the comments trying to attack me about that's not my point. My point is, as a mother as well, seeing a mother go 10 toes down, all in about their child is
Yep.
something I respect. I just respect.
What you're saying is these guys aren't the only people on trial right now.
And that's the truth. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And I
It's
will say, to that point, it's the way you worded it is perfect, because what happened when, Woonie Lee's testifying, and he said, he makes mention of Quay. He makes mention of, he said, he reads the hashtag that says free Quay. And when you're this is the thing, when you're at home, for me, I'm at home and I'm like, oh my gosh, he said free Quay. And I'm literally, my reaction, oh my gosh, he said free Quay. This is crazy. When you're in the courtroom with the friends and family, right, of the people who are affected by this, and you see them and hear them audibly, it becomes the difference between a fair trial and not a fair trial.
Yeah.
The difference of them potentially getting bond and getting to go home and not. For me, it's like, this is crazy. For them, it is the literal difference of a fair trial or not. And that again was like, oh, I see the impact of this. I see the impact of mistakes the state has made. Mistakes, whether intentional or not.
Yeah.
But those building up, right? It's hard to, it became real. It just became really real. It made me view the mistakes of the state differently.
Yeah.
Because the state's mistakes have real life consequences for the defendants.
It's like people always say I'm a hard ass or whatever. I'm real blunt and I don't give people a second chance, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about everybody out there in the world today, when you show up late to your job, right?
Mm-hmm.
One time, that second time they writing you up.
Yeah.
You show up again late, just late, you getting fired.
Yeah.
There's a consequence behind it.
It's a consequence.
Right. And we're just talking about a job, whatever.
Yeah.
And it only affects you or whatever.
Yeah.
But you're letting these prosecutors mess up time after time.
Repeatedly.
Like major mess ups, And to your point, you got to feel that energy from their families.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know that was heavy.
And it was, I'm pointing out Yak's mom, but there was a family member for Shannon Stillwell. There was a family member for Little Rod. And we are in the thick of a conviction, a situation he's already been convicted of. Imagine your loved one already being convicted and that conviction is again being used for another conviction, and there's no additional real charge, it's the same conviction as the basis for this conviction, and that's your loved one. I understand how the only view you see this as is double jeopardy, because that's my people. You already punished him. Why is he gonna be punished again?
They kicking him while he's down.
Yeah. And so
there's no need for all of that.
To view it from the family's lens, that's really the point of what I'm saying. Like I said, it was Yak's mom. I think his girlfriend potentially was there. Yeah. His girlfriend was there. A loved one of Shannon, loved one of Little Rod. And there could have been more. These are just the people I engaged with for Wednesday. It was like, I've always said I can only imagine how it feels, but to be able to be there was a different experience and made me, it just made me view it in a different way. Yeah. So anyway, that is what happened. Anyway, so Woonie Lee's on the stand, and what ends up happening is the state, Miss Hilton, hands him an Instagram picture and is having him read the caption. And he finishes reading, and she says, "What's the caption say?" Essentially, read the next caption. Read the next hashtag. I think is what she said. Yeah. The hashtag had already been discussed to have been removed. Okay. Quamarvius Nichols, I think, attorney Miss Nicole Westmoreland, had already addressed this with the state and the judge to redact Free Quay. Okay. Redact it. It was redacted on the electronic image. It was not redacted in the physical paper that is given to Woonie Lee to read. And so while he's on the stand and she says, "Read the next hashtag," he reads Free Quay, because on his paper, that's the next hashtag. Mind you, just before that moment, she asked him to identify everybody in the courtroom. So she said, "Do you know?" She's literally, "Do you know Jeffrey Williams?" Yup. "What do you call him?" "Okay, Thug." "Do you know Shannon Stillwell?" "Yup." "What do you call him?" "Shannon." "Do you call him anything else?" "No." "Do you know Marquavius Huey?" "Yup." "What do you call him?" "Quay." "Do you know Quamarvius Nichols?" "Yup." "What do you call him?" "Quay." And then she goes on to tells him to read a hashtag which says Free Quay. Now, at some point, and y'all know I be trying to be fair, at some point, Judge Whitaker said, "Yeah, but Free Quay is used with like Hollywood stars to get out of relationships." And I was like, what?
The term Free Quay?
Well, not Quay, but free. Like when people say this person, like you're like, I mean, what came to my mind is Kanye and his wife, when it's like free her, or like, when people be playing and stuff. So she was alluding to that could mean that.
The judge said that?
Yeah. But in the context of a trial, in the context of potential criminals, Free Quay gonna mean Free Quay, especially when you just had him identify who the Quays are. Why would that? How could that reference anything but if I say free you, the implication is you're not free.
And they've been using all these rap lyrics all through the court case, all the vernacular that
they used it for Free Britney Spears. So like Free Britney when she was like under the situation with her dad, maybe. I hear, okay, Patreon is saying that.
But no, the people that they're dealing with don't talk like that.
Well, when that's true.
And that's what I'm talking about. They use the rap lyrics. You know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
It's not Free Britney Spears.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody even.
Yeah. The conservatorship. Thank you. Savannah corrected me. It was the conservatorship of Britney's father. But in that same breath, she says, well, isn't there another Quay? And so they're like, yeah, there's a third Quay. Apparently his name is Slack Quay. And so they were like, well, so she literally, what happens is she's like, if there's a Slack Quay, a third Quay, what if defense and state, y'all just agree that we can stipulate or tell the jury, hey, when we said free quay, it's about slack quay. It's not about these two quays. It's a whole different quay. And so she's essentially like moving them towards this. She's like, she's like, can we just agree to stipulate to the jurors free quay? And Nicole Westmoreland, and shout out to her, because she said, before I agree to that, can you rule on my mistrial? On my motion for a mistrial? Because she motioned for a mistrial. She said, you cannot unring this bell. The bell has been rung 100 times, and every time it rings, you cannot just keep unringing it. This is prejudicial. This is not okay. There are two quays in this courtroom. My client is affected. And then Marquavius Huey's attorney, he stood up and said, and my quay is also affected too. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. So she said both of them are affected. So it's a mistrial.
Then you got a third quay you trying to put up in there.
Yeah. And so the judge is like, let's just stipulate it's another quay. And so Nicole Westmoreland says, rule on my mistrial first. And so the judge says, what kind of mistrial you want? Is it a mistrial with prejudice? And so Nicole Westmoreland says, yes, because I feel like we are being goaded. I feel like they are drawing us in to have this mistrial. We don't want a mistrial, but we feel like they are making us do this because they keep making these mistakes. So how else do I take this?
Yeah.
So then the judge says, a mistrial with prejudice, I'm denying. But are you saying you want a mistrial without prejudice? And just so we're all clear, prejudice would mean this trial cannot be tried again. The state has intentionally messed up so that this case would be mistried, and because of that, as a punishment to them for intentionally messing this up, they cannot retry it. So the judge said no to that. But then she said, are you asking for a mistrial without prejudice? Which means we end this now, but the state can bring y'all back. They can try your clients again. When she said that, look, this is my perspective. I don't know what everybody else in that courtroom was thinking, but I said, oh, well, hold on. What are we doing here? I mean, it just, all the attorneys are like, and so she said, so they kind of look around and she says, can we talk? Can we discuss? And then she was like, and so the judge said, do you want the defendants to talk too? And she said, the defense attorneys want to huddle outside. We don't need the defendants right now, but can the defense huddle outside?
Yeah.
So the defense attorneys go huddle outside. The defendants are still in the courtroom. Some of their tables are close together. And so I think Shannon moved to Doug's table or turn around his seat. I think Nichols maybe was over there. There's just like these defendants and they're all talking.
Mm-hmm.
And the state is also beginning to talk. I think Love was in there at that point. A body for sure. Hilton was in there. Everybody's huddling, and we in the benches, we're just kind of like, well, you know me. It's my first day. I'm like, well, what did I walk into today? What are we talking about?
Oh,
and we just waited. We waited and we waited and we waited. And then she was like, let's take 5, let's take 10, let's take 15. And I'm thirsty at that point. So I'm like, I'm going to go get some water and try to walk by wherever the huddles are to see if I run into anybody. As I'm walking out, I'm passing some of the attorneys. I think Hilton is on the phone. It's just, it felt for me. Everybody else can be like, girl, it wasn't that. It felt intense I felt like this could end the trial. Like we could be at the point of breaking this.
So a mistrial, who would, not sure if you know this or not, who would be able to come home?
So when there is a mistrial, especially without prejudice, you have to file a motion to be out on bond because the state has to decide if they're going to try you again. This is very similar. Think of like Y&W Melly. It was for a hung jury, but it was essentially when you have a hung jury, the result is a mistrial. So in a mistrial, everything, it just means we didn't get to complete this trial, right? It was mistried, like we didn't finish it. So everything stays in place unless and until something changes. So the defendants stay in jail unless and until something changes, as in a motion for bond is filed and the judge says, okay, you get to go free while we have the next trial. Or in the case of Thug, there is a ton of talk about a speedy trial motion that was filed on his behalf and what that could mean for him. I don't have all the details, so I'm not going to talk specifically about that. But as far as I know, a mistrial in terms of what his situation is could look and feel very different versus everybody else because of his speedy trial motion. But generally, everybody stays in place until. So even in, I think Karen Reed, right? It was a mistrial because that case didn't get to continue, but she was already out. So she continues to stay out and they just prep for the new trial. If she was in jail, she would continue to stay in jail and prep for the new trial unless and until there's a motion filed with a judge for bond and that judge approves that bond. Other than that, you stay where you are.
That's, well, I guess so.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair at all, but you know, it don't
Yeah.
seem like nothing in this court case seems fair. So
Fair.
yeah.
Somebody is asking, would Paige be, somebody in the Patreon, would Paige be, Suzette, let me say her name, not just somebody. Would Paige be the judge to decide the bond? The answer to that is yes. So everybody's talking.
Question from Patreon. Wooney
Lee.
Is that his real name? His first name? Wooney?
Yeah, his name is Wooney Lee, and his rapper name is Slime Life Shawty, which he said on the stand.
His real name is like a rapper name.
It is, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wooney Lee.
And I think if you watched either my video or the trial live, you, in my opinion, saw the sincerity in his voice and what he did. He said, it was on the paper you gave me. I was reading the paper. And even when he did the first time, when he said Shannon been locked up, he was like, am I not allowed to say that? And what Nicole Westmoreland really emphasized, which I think is important to recognize here, she said it is painfully obvious that the state is not prepping their witnesses. You would imagine that before you bring somebody on the stand, you have a conversation with them. Hey, you're going to be on next week. We're going to ask you about this, 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 and this. If you know you have previously gotten in trouble for witnesses mentioning the defendants being in jail, it seems like a no-brainer would be to tell all your witnesses, don't mention jail for anybody.
Yeah.
And instead of doing that, they're not prepping anybody, putting them on the stand and letting them say whatever the heck they want to. And then when it becomes a motion for a mistrial, they're like, we ain't do it on purpose.
I have a friend of mine that went to court, and right before court started, one of the prosecutors was said, where are all your witnesses? Everybody that's coming up to represent you. This young lady took those guys to the back, asked them different questions, came back and was like, do not let this certain guy testify. He answered this certain question a certain way. Right. You do not want that. Right. So, and this is a little small case situation. So just imagine in this huge case, you need to prep your witnesses.
Well, and here's the thing. Last week, there was a motion for a mistrial. And the reason for that is because the main investigator for this case, Investigator Dennis or Detective Dennis, is on the stand and did the same thing. She asked him about a photo and he said he was in and out of jail before he took that picture. And so it was literally last week. It's almost a motion for a mistrial. They ended up getting sanctioned, said this investigator cannot come back on the stand. The judge was pissed. He cannot come back, took all his evidence. They still getting it in. But it was this big thing. A week later, and that's an investigator who's been doing this for 20 years. If he can get on the stand and mention that a defendant has been in jail, why wouldn't you at least expect and therefore prevent a lay regular person? This man said he was 25. Why wouldn't you at least say, hey, last week we got in big trouble. Please don't mention jail. And you don't do it. And that's where that, and literally when I give that example of last week, the investigator, and then Mooney Lee's on the stand, he mentioned Shannon's in jail. And then 2 minutes later, he mentions the free Quays. Okay. When you put those kind of mistakes, that's what I mean when I say the frustration in the family's eyes.
Yeah.
The pain of it's those kinds of things, the careless mistakes. That is like, this stuff shouldn't even be happening. And then when it happens, there's no real consequences in our loved ones, right? That we are paying to defend and helping and being here and losing sleep. Our loved ones. It doesn't matter. They just, oh, well, sorry.
Yeah, they ain't playing fair.
Yeah.
That's all.
So
they can make all the mistakes.
Yeah. And
breaking the law, not abiding by the law.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to these young fellas or people in general, you know, they always hold them to the fire.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So anyway, so that happens. It eventually the judge says, tell the jury to come back tomorrow at 9 unless they hear otherwise. And then she tells all of us, court is adjourned. And then Maurice, the camera guy for Law and Crime, he says, Judge, what time should I be back tomorrow? Because we were all thinking it. And she says 9 a.m., but we're not starting at 9. And so all of us, and by us, I mean the people who were there on yesterday, prepped and prepared basically to try to get there. I would say as close to 9 as possible. I'm still on West Coast time. I was sleepy this morning, but I got there a little before 10. And he was already there. And there's a sign-up sheet because everybody knows it's about to be packed today. And we're all prepping. And then we get word, we're being told that it's going to start around 11. So I'm like, okay, cool. That's not bad. You know, it's 10 now, like whatever. And I see a bunch of people, all the defense attorneys, I see them walking around. More and more family and friends people are showing up. And then around 11:30, I look at my phone and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 11:30. Like, should we go over there? Like, what's happening? We wait a little bit. Eventually we go over there. I would say like around 11:40, like 10 minutes later. And we're just waiting. And I'm like, okay, are we getting ready to go in? Like, I'm ready to get something from the day. Cause everybody, the internet is going crazy. What's happening? What's happening? And when I tell you we are standing there and I see WSB TV, I see 11 Alive, I see Atlanta's First News, I mean, it is, the people are here.
Yeah.
And then the officer, maybe deputy, I don't want to be disrespectful, I don't know the titles. He opens the door. He's inside the courtroom. He opens the door where we're all standing at the door. And he says, court is done for the day.
What?
And I should say, yesterday, okay. Yesterday.
Did y'all even go in?
No, but let me tell you, yesterday when I was like, hey, excuse me, I want to leave and go get some water. And he was like, you're not allowed to leave. He said, you're not allowed to leave. And I was like, are you being for real? Like, I'm in a courtroom. Can I leave? Can I not leave? So when he did it today, everybody, and I especially, was like, oh, he playing, like he being funny. And so somebody says like, are you kidding? And he's like, no, court is done. And Maurice is like, my camera's in there. I set my camera up. Like, are you sure? Like, we never went inside. And he's like, court is done. And so it literally was just done. We never went inside ever. We just were out there for a couple hours.
Hey, the judge, prosecutors, the state, defend everybody, they have to sit down and talk. They got to figure something out. And that's probably what it was. I mean, Simply VM is asking, do you think are people are they doing this on purpose so they can retry and get a second chance at convicting these guys?
Well, and that would be goading. The whole point of goading is that you are trying to make something happen so that the defense files for a mistrial so that you get another bite at the end. You get to try again. We did a bad job, but if we started again, we would get you. A lot of people are going to stone me. What I will say is, I don't believe that the questions that Simone Hilton asked were done so in hopes that Woonie Lee would say what he said. I don't believe she was asking that so he would say that. Even with the hashtag, I think that she was so careless that she did not pay attention to the fact that he's reading from a paper that has a hashtag you were supposed to move. However, okay, hear me, because y'all gonna curse me out. Hear me. However, not prepping your witnesses, I do question if that's not intentional. And not even question, I believe that's intentional. I believe you don't prep your witnesses on purpose, and therefore you can't hide your hands when they get on the stand and say something you didn't know they were going to say, because why didn't you prep them then?
I agree, but it's kind of fishy.
Oh, sure.
That you take the hashtag off the virtual, off the screen, but then you don't take it off the paper that you give the man, as if he's going to be, as if he knows what's happening.
Yeah.
So,
but I think it's a case they're not prepared or equipped to try. I think it's disorganization. That's why I think the whole trial has been, even the witnesses, the storytelling, what they're trying to get across has been so sporadic and disorganized and hard to follow. And I think that reflects even in their evidence. I think the order of the witnesses, which has been insane, matches the carelessness taken with the actual evidence. I think it's all been chaotic because they're not equipped to handle this. And so for that reason, you should be penalized, because you don't get to do this at the expense of people's lives. And let me say, because somebody else said something and I just want to make sure I agree with the comment. So I want to emphasize.
Okay.
Anything I am saying in regards to the defendants' families that I got to experience, please hear me very, very clearly, because I won't address any comments regarding this. Hear me clearly. There are murder charges in this indictment. The people who died and the family and loved ones of the people who died deserve justice. They deserve for those victims to be fought for, and for the people who harmed them and victimized them to be penalized. I would never disrespect victims or the family of victims. I would never. That's not even who I am. That's not what we do. I would never. Okay. I believe everybody has a right to a fair trial. And I actually believe the state is doing a disservice to the victims in this case by the way they are handling this case. The disservice is being done to the people you should actually be fighting for. And I use fighting loosely because, they're not supposed to be advocates. But the disservice is being done to victims, and the way the trial is being handled is unfairly to the defendants. Yeah. Two things can be true.
So because the families of the people that lost their lives, what are you doing, state?
Sure. And let's be clear. I was DM'd by somebody, a victim, a relative of a victim, who said, even I don't like the way they're handling this case. We feel like we are not even going to get justice because of the way they are handling this case.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Everybody's focusing on this, but in reality, it's as equal or even more on this side. These
absolutely
people are hurting as well.
For sure.
And that goes over everybody's head. You talking about free these or free that, and these people are over here suffering too.
Yes. And to be clear, because somebody's asking, Veronica, I think it's a good question that a lot of people may not know. Veronica's question from the Patreon again: Are all the murders already convicted? For some reason, I thought they were already convicted, and then the charges are to support the RICO. No, and this is my point, right? Rodalius Ryan, that's a convicted charge. He's already been charged, convicted. So it's just being used in this case. This case, the Donovan Thomas murder, this is the trial for that murder. In this trial, they are supposed to be proving what happened to that man. And at the end, the jurors have to also make a guilty or not guilty verdict on if they believe the people the state said committed that murder really did. This case also encompasses that murder and the second murder, which is Shymel Drinks. They are supposed to also be proving that, not just Rico. And so when I say, right, you're supposed to be getting justice for Thomas, what happened to him, and yet you present video surveillance in February and don't present phone records till October. If that was my people, I would be like, this, why are you trying to do it like this? Are you trying to throw the case?
Yeah.
So
that's I ain't even I haven't thought about that. The victims.
Yeah.
And that's
so
that's deep. That's tough. You don't even hear about that side of the coin.
And I mean, this is the other thing. There are 65 charges in this case. We've talked it. There are 65. Count one is the RICO. Count two is the murder of Donovan Thomas, which again is why I'm saying they also have to prove that. There are 63 more that they are supposed to be proving. They are supposed to be proving. We haven't even heard about, really? We like touched on one. I thought we were about to get into charges like 15, 16, and 17 because they mentioned them. And then it just stopped. And I was like, oh, are we not going to talk about that right now? Because those are actual charges you guys have to prove in order to get a guilty verdict for those. And then they just stopped. So I was like, oh, I don't know what's happening.
So you're saying after 150 days of court, there's only been really 2 charges they've been addressing.
In my opinion, I'm telling you, I thought we were getting into 15, 16, 17, and then it just stopped. I'm pretty sure, or 14, 15. There were some charges with Marquavius Huey that they brought up. And so I was like, oh, I think we're getting into Marquavius Huey's charges. And then literally they stopped, and now we're in Rodalius Ryan, which again, Rodalius Ryan's murder is already convicted. So this whole section of the case the trial right now is for RICO. We're back to number 1 again.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, so all of that to say, trial ended today. At first there was rumors that there would be
did the trial even happen?
Well, we never went inside, but I mean, there were conversations being had. We just didn't get to see them.
Okay.
At first there was, people were saying that there will be a trial. I mean, they'll be back tomorrow, meaning Friday. This will go up on Friday. But at first people were saying that. But then, listen, I made some good connections. I was networking. I was talking to the people, getting some information. And so somebody did text me and say, for sure, not happening tomorrow. Next time they're expected to be in court is Monday at 9 a.m. EST. So nothing will happen tomorrow. So I get to enjoy homecoming, which is the reason I came.
Don't enjoy it too much. I ain't around. Don't be drinking too
much. So anyway, it was a good. I'm happy I came. I think it was a good experience being here, getting to, just interact and talk to people. Also, it was on a personal note, seeing how many people knew who I was, or I am rather, was cool. I was like, I can't believe this many people know me. Like, this is really weird, but also really cool.
And the energy, accepting you, you know what I'm saying? Because you never know how people perceive you online,
Absolutely. And you're covering something so sensitive. Like, these are people's families. And to the point you guys are, somebody was saying, but to the victims and to the victims, to the defendants, and to the state. This is very sensitive. And so if I'm doing a bad job to any one of those sides, it can be very problematic if I walk into a courtroom and they're there. So to walk into that courtroom and to not experience that, to walk into that courtroom and to, have compliments on both sides. And like I said, I'm not lying when I say that. I have had family members of some of the victims say what I said. So, and I hope that continues to remain true. Maybe all of them don't like me. Maybe some of them hate me, but to be able to get that compliment made me proud, because I generally try to recap stuff in a way as to what there is said. and not to say, you know, whatever, and not to, but be completely, you have your own bias naturally, but not to do that. And so to hear that people receive it the way that I intend was really nice.
Yeah. And I'm glad it went that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make me feel good. So you can travel back and forth to Atlanta with no smoke.
Hilarious. Thank you for, I mean, this was a different style of episode, obviously, because I'm traveling and it just was mainly me talking and Greg asking questions. But I hope that you still enjoyed the episode. And if you're not a member of Patreon, obviously join, follow me on all the platforms. I'm not a lawyer, but follow you. How can they find you?
Oh, you can catch me on IG, GOOLZBY, and Building with Goose on YouTube.
Tap into the Patreon, and until next time, we don't have our gavel.
Hold up, I got a little one. Court is adjourned.
All right.